Second poem by Richard Blanco, Betting on America, Latinx Voices, Spring 2020. In this poem by Blanco, we have a specific situation he's trying to describe. His family is at the kitchen and they're watching a show. The show is Miss America, the pageant. With, who do we have gathered at the table, if you will? Well, each person seems to be betting on who is going to win, right? So we have abuelo, um, grandfather. We have the poet himself as a child. We have next an aunt of his, Tia Gloria, he mentions. Next page, page 10, we have his own dad. He mentions him as Papa Refused. Then cousin Julito. And next, we have Uncle Pedro, Tio Pedro, into picking her as the sure winner. Those are the lines. And then we finally end with the actual winner of the contest, plus a stanza that closes the whole situation. So, to begin with, this is a poem about memory and how important is recollections are of moments of intimacy within the family, the Cuban family, gathered at the table, doing something fun. This is important to recognize because I want you to know that in this case we have a poet, Richard Blanco, who wants to be accessible and bring you in the poem precisely because you may be familiar with this kind of situation. So, but maybe we're not that familiar with the situation in the sense that the family here gather at the kitchen or watching TV and placing bets on the possible winners for Miss America. They're Cuban Americans. And it seems that the Miss America pageants, as described in the poem, is representative of the whole of America. It's like an institution. If you come to this country, you will watch the show, and each specific women participating in the pageant is actually being is representing one single state, right? Each is representative of a state. Therefore, the country is all gathered together as they are watching this show. Now, throughout the poem, what we have is the options or the reasons or for thinking that one specific contestant will win, right? So, for instance, the abuelo says about Miss Wyoming, she's got great teeth. And that's the reason for him to say she must be the winner, right? Secondly, we have an interesting and key moment for the poem when the poet starts saying that he is more acquainted with the country than these guys, these other guys who are just coming into the country. And he, in stanza 3, right, for instance, says an important line for the poem, thinking I was as American as she was, I guess, Miss Wisconsin, because I was as blonde as she was. And I knew that's where all the cheese, Wisconsin, came from. And then in the next stanza, he will repeat that kind of approach. I know this country, and I can relate each participant to a specific attribute, feature of a specific state. Therefore, I am going to win this game because these guys my family surrounding me are not really acquainted with the country, right? Um, Now, this specific line caught my eye. I was as blonde as she was because it may have to do perhaps with color and also self perceptions as a child and um, color may be a way for you to belong in the country according to the child. So that's an interesting moment, I would say, to see yourself, um, being part of the community because you look like um, people within the community. Right? Um, Another interesting moment for me in the poem when color again appears in stanza number 7. This is pertaining to Miss Alabama and what cousin Julito is going for, which in this case is breasts, bosom. Miss Alabama's bosom on the screen, the leggy mulata sashaying in pumps, swimsuit, seducing Tio Pedro into picking her as the sure winner. It's like now we are recognizing ourselves in one of the contestants because she looks like many other people we have seen in Cuba, or many women we have seen in Cuba. So again, color playing right a role to, in this case, let us know that we know this country, we're acquainted with it. If we are placing the bet, right, um, we may win because we know something about this, and we should be right about it. But the poem brings a surprise at the end when the winner happens to be Miss Ohio, and nobody from the family actually placed the bet on her. Um, but the description of the poet is interesting, I found, because it's such a glorious moment in his eyes that he's kind of mesmerized by what he's seeing on TV, right? In stanza number 9, gloves up to her elbows, velvet down to her feet, crying diamonds into her bouquet, the queen of our country, our land of the free, amid the purple mountains of her majesty, floating across the stage. It's like a vision, right? It's like a vision. Um, a vision that in the imagination of the child totally pertains to what America seems to be for him, or is all about for him. Mm. And then the surprise comes also at the end when we have a question in Spanish which ends the poem, right? ¿Dónde está Ohio? ¿Dónde está Ohio? Meaning where is actually Ohio? Um, and the poet adds before that, not even me knew about where this state was at, right? Where was it in the map of the state? So this assurance of self-assurance of the poet as a child, I know my states, I know my country, I know my people, actually comes at the end um, to to reveal us the child's approach to knowledge. At the same time, I think it's beautiful that by acknowledging his lack of knowledge, the poet sees himself as part of this community in exile, recently immigrated to the country. So no matter who the person in the family is, they are all together, not only because they fantasize about knowledge they may not have, but also because they are united by this coming to the country, coming to knowledge, um, and that's part of their own story as Cuban Americans.